All right, I want to move on in this new video series to a chapter-by-chapter discussion of an astrological classic called Hermetic Astrology by Robert Powell, which was published in 1989, at least Volume 2. Here it is on Amazon. And I want to start with Volume 2 because I think it's a much stronger book, and I think Volume 1 takes a little too long to get off the ground. And I also think there's some problems with Volume 1 in that Powell is an anthroposophist, and he's trying to rectify basically one of the main esoteric systems that Rudolf Steiner left out of account was astrology. And so Powell is trying to bring that in and combine it with Rudolf Steiner's his reincarnation research. And so that's what this is about. That's what Powell is doing, is combining reincarnation studies with astrology, which I find very appealing and I think is very concrete. So this is the book on Amazon if you're interested in ordering it. So he starts then with a case study of Wagner and Nietzsche, and it really is the book's main case study. It occupies quite a bit of the book. And here we have Nietzsche. This is Nietzsche's birth chart, October 15th, 1844, 10 a.m., born in Leipzig. And so one of the things about anthroposophical astrology is that it uses the sidereal system, which the West does not use. Most astrologers in the West use the tropical system. But the problem with the tropical system, and I think Powell has a good point, and I tend to agree with him, is that there's been a slippage every year during springtime when the sun rises. There's a slippage of 1 degree every 72 years. Every 72 years it slips 1 degree. And so it's not rising in Aries, even though we associate Aries with the March vernal equinox. It's rising, as everyone knows, in the tail end of Pisces and moving slowly into Aquarius. And so your astrological sign might actually be 23.5 degrees back further in the zodiac. And so he sticks with the sidereal, which I generally tend to agree with because I like that it's concrete. It's the actual positions of the planets relative to the background stars. And so Nietzsche here, in Nietzsche's case, he's a Libra either way. Here he's right on the cusp of Libra, 0 degrees, but he has the characteristics of Libra, the balance between Apollo and Dionysus, for instance, and that is seen here in his sun opposite Pluto. Pluto down here. Pluto has to do with power. Pluto has to do with the abyss. Pluto has to do with dark transformative energies that are very Dionysian in nature. And so you can already see his interest in the will to power here. The sun is the ego, the waking daylight conscious personality. So we have his interest in the will to power, but it's also the balance with the sun in Libra, the scales between Apollo, the sun god is Apollo, and Pluto, which is a kind of Dionysian god and has Dionysian associations. And then so what Powell does is he points out, so notice where Nietzsche's ascendant-descendant axis is, because the ascendant has to do with the personality and the descendant has to do with one-on-one relationships with others. And let's see, the ascendant here is at 7 degrees Scorpio, which makes it 7 Taurus at the other end here. Notice too that his nodes are conjunct. The north node over here is 15 degrees Scorpio, so it's conjunct the ascendant by a wide orb of about, 8 degrees, but nonetheless it is conjunct the ascendant-descendant axis, north node, south node, and the nodes are the moon's points of intersection with the ecliptic as it moves along, and the nodes have to do with karma. The south node brings in karmic energies from the past, and the north node has to do with the karmic energies that you're trying to get to. And I find it also interesting with Nietzsche that the north node is conjunct the moon. His moon is 17 degrees, and the north node was 15 degrees, so they are conjunct. And so then what Powell does is he points out, this is Wagner's birth chart. May 22nd, 1813 at 4 a.m. And then so here we have Wagner's ascendant descendant axis is conjunct Nietzsche's descendant axis. It's off by, well, it's 6 degrees 51, so Nietzsche's was 7. And they're reversed. The ascendant, Wagner's ascendant is conjunct Nietzsche's descendant and vice versa. Keep those nodes in mind. The nodes are crossing this. And then so we have Wagner over here as a Taurus, using the sidereal system as a Taurus. And the Sun is conjunct Venus. And then so there's definitely karmic connections here. I mean, these charts line up pretty well. And the Sun conjunct Venus, that would be associated with an artist. They almost always have Venus. I've noticed in the birth charts of artists, they almost always have Venus, which has to do with that which appeals to the senses, whether it's sex or art or food or what have you. Conjunct the Sun, the personality on the ascendant. This is a guy who's going to be an artist. No two ways about it. But so what Paul does, and I think it's a mistake. Occasionally, these guys make mistakes, no matter how good their books are. Is that he says, okay, it's very suitable for Wagner that he has his ascendant in Taurus, Taurus is the bull. Wagner was all about enjoying life, drinking, having sex, having a good time. Very earthbound. Taurus is an earth sign. Plus, Venus rules over Taurus, so Venus is exalted in Taurus. It is in its correct sign here. But with Nietzsche, then we have an ascetic, more or less, a person who is not really good at life or good with life. Nietzsche was indoors most of the time, reading books. He wasn't out there carousing all that much. And so here we have Nietzsche's ascendant which is conjunct Wagner's, in Scorpio. And the mistake that Paul makes is that he says, well, Scorpio used to be associated with an eagle, which is true. The four evangelists, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are associated with the tetramorph that's taken from the vision of Ezekiel, where we have Taurus for the spring equinox and then Leo for the summer, and then the eagle rather than the scorpion for the fall, and then the waterman, Aquarius, the water bearer for winter. And so he says, so he substitutes the eagle, even though as an actual fact, I'm afraid to say it, but this was Scorpio going as far back as the Babylonians. If you read, and maybe even the Sumerians, because if you read the Babylonian version of the Epic of Gilgamesh, the old Babylonian version of it, he is traveling along the zodiac. The road of the sun god Shamash is what he's traveling on. And when he comes to the Scorpion people, they are there and they correspond to the sign of Scorpio in the fall. So the Scorpion was there first. So I don't see any need to oppose Nietzsche to Wagner as eagle to bull, with Nietzsche being the more intellectual one, obviously. The bird's eye view, surveying the landscape from the bird. Scorpios, on the other hand, it's a mystical sign that has to do with ego, death, and transformation. And it's a water sign, so it already suits Nietzsche's personality to be a Scorpio. The Dionysian principle is all about the dissolution of the form, of the Apollonian individual form, into the abyss, into the collective. That's what it's about. That's its whole purpose. And so note too that Nietzsche's moon is roughly conjunct Wagner's sun, even though it's kind of a wide orb. Nietzsche's moon is 17 Scorpio, and let's see, Wagner's sun is 9 Taurus, or not conjunct, but in opposition. But it's close enough. It's like 8 degrees. There's definitely karmic energies, sun opposite moon. And the fact of the axes being conjunct is pretty amazing. The basic social axis. I think of the ascendant descendant as the social axis, whereas the midheaven up here, which is noon, corresponds to noon, and the lower heaven I think of as the career axis, just to simplify it, even though the lower heaven has to do with one's childhood and one's relationship to one's parents, and the midheaven to one's profession. But very often I've noticed that it doesn't matter what end a planet is transiting. Uranus may come along and transit at this end, and you get a sudden breakthrough in your career, or Saturn may transit at this end of the descendant or at this end. I don't think that it matters, and it may bring someone karmic into your life, or it may end a relationship. And so in the case of Wagner and Nietzsche, the transit of Saturn, as we'll look at in just a second here, brought them together. They met in November 8th of 1868, and after Nietzsche had seen just about a month before a performance of the opening overtures to Die Meistersinger and Tristan und Isolde, and they just blew him away. He became an instant fan. So let's take a look at their meeting then. So the meeting is here, November 8th, 1868, when Nietzsche actually goes to visit Wagner at his house in Lucerne at that time. So here is Saturn, and this is the outer wheel of the planets live, and they move counterclockwise, and as they do that, they make transits to one's natal chart. And here is the transit. So Saturn is the planet that is associated with karma, or at least that's one of its associations. Other associations are death and form and discipline, law, authority, rigidity. Saturn makes things difficult, but I believe that it also brought them back because it's not only transiting over their conjunct social axes, but it's transiting over the nodes. This is Nietzsche's chart we're looking at here for the transits. It's transiting over Nietzsche's north and south nodes with the moon there. This is all karmic. So this brought them together, this transit here. So I think if you look, and it's just a couple of weeks later, the other thing too is notice the sun is crossing over Nietzsche's ascendant here. Let's give it one more week. And there it is, November 22nd. It's right on the ascendant. So the sun comes in as a bright principle to conjunct to conjunct Nietzsche's moon, and in opposition over here with where Wagner's sun conjunct Venus would be. So that all lights up. Their relationship basically lasts for 14 years, although only the first 7 or 8 of them are adulatory on the part of Nietzsche from 1868 to the Bayreuth Festival. The first one is 1876, and Nietzsche wrote an essay in his second book, Untimely Meditations, also celebrating Wagner, as he had written already The Birth of Tragedy, which was published in 1872. But it was there that he started, at that 1876 Bayreuth Festival, that he started to have the first inklings of disillusionment with Wagner. It took him a while. A couple of years later, he writes Human, All Too Human in 1878, sends it to Wagner. Wagner doesn't like it at all, is vaguely insulted by it. And then Wagner puts out his last opera. It's performed on July 26th of 1882. And then Wagner dies on February 13th of 1883. That pretty much completes the 14-year cycle. And let's shift this over to, I like this site because it calculates the transits for you, which saves a lot of time. So if we go to the date of Wagner's death, take a look at where Saturn's at. So it's coming around down here. Here it is here. Okay, we need to go a few more years. First, let's look at 1882. When Parsifal comes out, and Nietzsche absolutely hated Parsifal. He thought it was sanctimonious garbage, over the top, totally manipulative, and just showing just purely sanctimonious. And here's Saturn coming around, bringing the relationship to an end just about 14 years later. It's transiting over Nietzsche's descendant, or in other words, the social axis, which is, they have all these aspects, planets and points, the nodes in opposition and conjunction, and Saturn is just coming along, just severing all the ties here, and then Wagner dies a few months later. All right, and then let's go back now and take a look at 1872 when Nietzsche published his first celebration of Wagner, which was The Birth of Tragedy, which is one of my favorite works of philosophy. Actually, it's pretty spectacular. Where are we at here? We need to go back, let's say 6 months from that point. I think it came out right at the beginning of January of 1872. to, but let's put it back in May. Will work. But actually, let's move it ahead a bit here, because I think something interesting happens that year in 1872 with the two of them. Let's go one more month and see. So we're in July now. Okay. So the interesting thing is here, so we're still with Nietzsche's chart. These are his transits, not Wagner's. The interesting thing is, so 1872, Nietzsche is on his Saturn return. He's 28 years old. He had already been offered the chair of philology at the University of Basel a ways back, just about the time that he met Wagner. And here is Saturn coming around, just about to complete its return. It generally takes a little over 28 years to go around the sun, almost 29 actually. But the return energies begin to happen at age 28, 29, 30. They have a strong orb for about 2 years because it's a very important transit. And it marks a life threshold. Sometimes it's difficult, but it matures you, it changes you, it's transformative. Sometimes it can be associated with a major career home run. In his case, it was the publication of The Birth of Tragedy, which came out here, so we have Uranus over here, and here it is trining, which means it's a 120-degree angle, a soft angle, his natal Uranus, and Uranus is the planet of breakthroughs, the planet of sudden, transformative home runs. That's the planet where you just suddenly hit it big. So in 1872, he's got Uranus on his career axis. In the lower heaven aspect of it, he does have Jupiter conjunct it. And he also has Jupiter conjunct Uranus. It's kind of a wide orb, 4 degrees, 11 degrees, kind of a wide orb, but still conjunct. And I would say that both of them, plus the career axis, are being activated over here by Uranus at this time, during this year, even though the book had already come out in January. But the reason I wanted to push it ahead into the summer is because that same year, notice that Uranus is also trining over here all the stuff that he has in common with Wagner on his social axis here, which is Sun opposition Moon, and the nodes conjunct the ascendant descendant. The ascendant descendant conjunct each other in both cases. So it's also simultaneously, that planet of breakthroughs is doing good stuff for Wagner's career and great stuff for Nietzsche's as well. Pretty spectacular how this stuff works. I love astrology. It's absolutely amazing when you get down into the trenches here and really just look at it. And so that's kind of a brief, I'll keep this video simple. I just wanted to open up the door here and also to say that, so this is how Powell begins the book, by looking at their charts, except I've looked at them in way more detail than he does. He just sort of, the main emphasis for him is on the ascendant-descendant axes that they have conjunct. Because what will happen, so next he will go into the past lives of Wagner and Nietzsche, and their past life together was in the 16th century, where Wagner was Saint Teresa of Avila, and Nietzsche was her disciple, Peter of Alcantara. And so we'll look at how he figures that out. And there, note that the relationship was reversed in that case, with Wagner as Teresa, Nietzsche as Alcantara. And so we'll look at all that in the next video and just go from there with this fantastic astrological text, one of my favorites.